Hi, this is needlepointers.com and I'd like to show you how to put a lining inside of a crocheted bag. This is the lining I put in the bag, and it has some nice pockets in it, and I'll show you how to make the pockets and how to line the bag. Okay, the first step is to figure out how big to cut your lining fabrics. To figure that out, take a tape measure and measure the width of your bag at the widest point. So my bag is 19.5 inches wide. So I want a piece that's going to be 19.5 inches plus 2 inches for the seam allowances on each side. So that way you will get a bag that's the right width. And you'll cut two pieces of that size, or if you can do with the folded piece of fabric, I've cut mine with the folded piece of fabric to be 19.5 inches wide by the width of the by the width of the fabric. So I have the whole width, so I have the fold here. So that way I don't have to sew the bottom of the bag, the bottom of the lining for the bag. So I'm cutting mine at 21.5 inches wide. And then to figure out the height of the lining, you measure the height of your bag, which I'm measuring at about 16 inches. And then you add 1 inch for the top seam allowance, because we're going to fold under an inch at the top. And then you add the width of your bottom of your bag, or half of the width of the bottom of the bag, basically. So the width of my bottom is about 5 inches. So I'm going to add 2.5. So my height happens to be 18 inches plus 1 inch for the seam allowance, plus 2.5 inches for the half of the bag bottom. And that equals 21.5 inches also. So my fabric is going to be 21.5 inches wide by 21.5 inches tall. But I'm going to cut mine. I already cut the width of the bag with the fold, so I don't have to sew at the bottom. So I'm going to just cut the 21.5 for the height. If you have to sew the bottom, then don't forget to add another 1 inch for your seam allowance on the bottom. Next, I've decided I'd like to put a couple pockets in the lining of my bag. So what I will do is I'm cutting a piece of fabric that's the same as the width of the bag. Again, this is my bottom of my bag, because there's the fold. So I'm cutting a piece 21.5 inches wide, and I decided I would like this pocket to be about 6 inches tall. So I've cut the piece actually 12 inches tall. So this piece is going to go all the way across, and we're going to sew little separators into the pocket, so that it's not just one big huge pocket that'll flop open. And we're going to double it up to give it more stability and body. I'm going to make a second pocket that's a smaller one. So this one I decided I'll probably put on the opposite side of the bag, but it's going to be closer to the top of the bag. So I want just a small pocket with then a couple of 2 or 3 sections in it. This one I've cut at 11 inches by about 12 inches. Again, I'm going to fold the fabric in half, and then I'm going to sew it on, show you how to sew it on. For my next step, I'm going to fold each of the pocket fabrics wrong sides together, and I'm going to press them. First, we're going to work with the smaller pocket, and besides just folding it in half and ironing it, what I also did was I folded in the side seams in about a 1/2 inch on each side, and then I folded it down, and that gives me a finished edge on each side. So I have to decide where to put the pocket, and I want it approximately in the middle of one of the sides. Remember, we're going to turn down the top edge at least 1 inch, so you want to make sure that you put it down probably at least 2 or 3 inches down from the top. I'm going to put this one about 3 inches down from the top edge. Now, in order to get a finished edge on the bottom, what we'll do is basically flip it over. So if you can see, I flipped it down now, to where I want it to be. And then I'm going to sew a 1/2 inch seam there and flip the pocket up and iron it up. Then I'll sew the sides up, and then this will be our pocket. So you want to make sure that you have the bottom seam in the location where you want the pocket to be. And you can pin it in place, but I'm just going to sew it across. So next I'm going to fold this up and I'm going to iron it flat. Next I'm going to top stitch and sew down the side seams of the pocket to finish attaching it to the back. Alright, so this pocket would be really wide and it's going to end up flopping open if we don't sew dividers in it. So what I'm going to do is just eyeing it up, I'm going to just sew 2 dividers in here to make one maybe slightly larger pocket in the middle, and then or 3 pockets about the same size. So I'm just going to sew a divider down here. And I'm going to sew a second divider down here. So you can choose to sew the dividers as wide as you would like them, or maybe measure. If you want to have a spot to put your cell phone, you would put your cell phone and measure to make sure that it's going to fit. And you could have 2 or 3, depends on whatever your preference is on what you need. But you want to make sure they're small enough so that they're not going to flop way open when you have the bag and you're carrying it around. The next step is to put on the bottom pocket. The bottom pocket is done in a similar fashion. If you have 2 pieces of fabric, then you're going to have a bottom. Your fabric is going to end like here, because this is where my fold is. So what you have to remember is that you have the bottom of the bag this is going to fold over into the bottom of the bag. Half of the number of inches of the bottom of the bag. And if you have to sew a seam allowance, then you have to include the seam allowance in there also. So for this, I want to make sure that my bottom pocket is at least 2.5 inches up from the bag, the bottom of the bag. I'm putting mine like 5.5, almost 5.5 inches, or almost 6 inches up from the bottom. You just want to make sure that when you flip it up, because it's going to flip up like the same as the other one did, that you're not overlapping your top pocket. And actually I was going to put this pocket on the opposite side, so level. And then all you have to do is sew a seam across the bottom, just like we did before, and then we're going to flip it up and press it. So I'll be back after I do that. So I've sewn the second pocket on and then flipped it up and I ironed it up. I'm going to do a quick basting stitch just to hold the sides in place so they don't get messed up while I'm sewing the sides together. So as with the smaller pocket, we want to put some separators in here because otherwise this whole pocket will just flop open when it's inside the bag. So I'm going to pick a few places to put the separators. I'll make a little bit bigger pocket over here. For the other pocket, I'm going to split this in half, and I'm just going to put another divider here. The next step is to sew the sides. So to do that, we're going to either put your two fabrics, if you have separate fabrics, right sides together, or fold them. Mine, I'm folding up right sides together. And you can pin along the sides or just sew it. I'm just going to sew it, and if you do have a bottom, if your bottom is open, then you're going to sew across the bottom at the same time. And you're sewing a 1/2 inch seam allowance because that's how much you calculated in when we did the calculations for how big to cut the fabric. The next step is to box the bottom corners. To do that, I open the seam up, and I want to line up my side seam with the bottom seam. In this case, the bottom fold, but if you have a seam there, you can line them up. So you get a triangle like this. If your bottom is 5 inches, then you want to measure 2.5 inches. You want to measure half the width of your bottom from the corner down. And then that's where you're going to sew a straight line from here to here to make this triangle, and that's going to box the bottom. So my bottom is 5 inches, so I will measure 2.5 inches down from the corner, and I'm going to sew a straight line across, corner to corner, or edge to edge here, and then we'll have this triangle form. Do the same on the other side. So now you can see there's a box corner, and what this does is it gives the squareness to the bottom of the bag, and it puts the bottom onto the bottom. So now it's like can kind of sit as a bag. The next step I like to do, you can if you'd like, you can trim the corners off. I ironed the side seams, and I ironed down the top edge 1 inch all the way around. Next, I'm going to put the lining into the bag. At this point, you want to line up the side seams with the side seams of your bag and pin it all the way around to hold it in place. I'll be back after I finish that. I've got the top now all pinned around the top of my bag. Now what I did was I pinned it just slightly below the top edge of my bag because I wanted to have it be below. I don't want it showing at the top. So I'm going to sew around, and I've changed my bobbin thread to be a cream color so it blends in a little bit better, and I'm keeping the top thread here to be the blue that I was using earlier. So just sew all the way around the top. So now I have the lining all sewn in. You can see it's sewn around the top. I don't know if you can see, but I can see the stitching along this here. So you want to use either matching thread or a thread you don't mind seeing along there to, if you want it more hidden. It's probably still going to be visible. So here's my finished bag with the lining and the nice pockets inside. If you're interested in seeing more photos of this project, please click the iCard or the link in the description of this video to visit our website, needlepointers.com. You can keep up with us by subscribing to our YouTube channel and following us on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, or Google+. Visit our website by clicking the iCard to find the links to follow us. If you're on Pinterest, pin our projects to your wall. This is a great way to keep track of your favorite projects. Visit our website, needlepointers.com, to find lots of other crochet projects and tutorials.